Thank you for joining me to do this take and make craft today. This month is book page roses, which you can still find on our circulation desk if you'd like. So if you want to open it up, we'll see in here what we have. So in each of the bags, you'll have our directions, which are also on our website. And you should have 2 skewers. And then 6 of these 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter book pages. And you can use any books you like, but I find that the thicker the paper, the harder it is to do the curl and to glue together. So the older pages, the ones that are like a little orangey, yellowish, I think work really nicely. And then after that, I threw in a couple of leaves in case you wanted to use them. I didn't on my samples, but I thought it was fun to rip up another book. So what we're going to do is just take one of these book pages to start. You can put the others aside. So on this 10 by 10, you want to put a corner to corner so that you're creating a triangle. And you're going to crease that other side. And then once you've done that, you're going to do it again so that it looks like this. And then you want to do it another time so that in essence you folded this 3 times. It sort of looks like one of those paper footballs that kids throw in class. So once you do this, grab your pair of scissors. And what you want to do is make a semicircle so that you're making it look like a petal. And you want it to be a little pronounced so that when we unfold this, you're going to have really distinct petals. Here we go. So that when I open it, you can see that there are each of these petals, okay? So keep it folded together for just a moment after you make that semicircle cut. And you want to cut just a little bit of that end off. Now with this one, put it aside. Don't open it quite yet. You're going to go back to your 10 by 10, and you're going to do that with 2 more so that you'll have 3 of these folded petals. One corner to one corner. I'm going to do it again here. And then one more time. I'm not going to do any cutting quite yet on these other 2 until I'm finished with the folding, and you'll see why. So I'm going to fold that guy. Another time. And another time. So now I have 2 of these guys. So go back to the one that you've already finished. And you're going to place that onto what you've just folded. If you have a pencil or a pen nearby, you want to trace where you cut it last time onto that new petal. And the reason is that you want all of the petals to have the same sort of shape. So that once you draw that semicircle, then you can cut. And you're going to cut that point again so that now I have 2 identical. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the 3rd. And it's okay if it's not exact, but you want it sort of similar. Cut that tip again so that you should have 3 of the same folded petals. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now we're going to open these all up. So that we have 3 of these flowers. Wonderful. Okay. You're going to take one of them and you're going to cut one of the petals. So at the ridge where we folded it, you're going to cut one of those petals off, and don't get rid of it. Don't crumple it or anything. We're going to use it. So that I've just cut one little piece from it. And I'm going to put that aside. And then you're going to take another flower. And again, at those creases, I'm going to cut off 2. You want them to be connected. So don't cut off 2 single petals. You want to cut off a group of 2. So that I've cut off, kind of looks like a little heart right there. So now I have my 2 and the rest. And again, I'm going to put it aside. And then with your last full circle, you're going to cut off 3 petals. So again, at that crease, I'm going to make a slit and then count 1, 2, 3 petals. And I'm going to cut it again. So that now I have my 3, and there should be 5 on the other one. Okay, so I'm going to put these all out so that you can see. I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 petals. And I should have a 7 because I've just cut that one little piece. And then I have a 5, a 3, a 2, and a 1. Okay. Now, this is where in the directions it might seem a little funky. So there are crease directions that are a little bit different on this guy. They're kind of going in multiple directions. What I want to do is make sure that they're all folded up like a cup. So we call that so that they're in the valley. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm just going to refold a little bit so that they're all sticking up like this. So you can see it's like a little bit of a cup. You're going to want to do that to all of them. So they're all facing up in the same direction. Take your handy dandy glue stick. And we're going to take, let's take that 7 piece, that big one. I'm just going to move these aside for a sec. You're going to glue just the edge right here so that these 2 pieces can form a little bit of like a flower cone together. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to come together just a little bit with not too much overlap there. So now it's going to sit together. And you can do that for all of the bigger pieces are 7, 6, 5, and 3. you want to glue those together. So on the open edge, and then closing it together. And while you're doing this, you might notice, at least on the Take and Make Kit pages, that there are some saucy language on there. We cut up 4 discarded romance novels, so I'd like to thank them for their sacrifice for this craft. Thought it was appropriate for Valentine's Day. Hope it's not too saucy. So that's the 5. It's looking a little bit more cone-ish. And then I'm going to finish with the 3. Just stick my finger in that one a little bit. And that's the 3. And this is where we're going to take next one of our skewers. So the skewers are going to act as our stem, but they're also going to help us curl the petals. So if you take your bigger one that's been sitting a little bit after you've glued it, your 7-piece, I'm going to take my skewer and I'm going to put it underneath the edge of the petal, and I'm going to roll it onto the skewer back and forth. And you can't really do it too hard because it is going to loosen a little bit over time. But when I do that, I've curled that edge a little bit. When we do that to all of the petals and then we'll stack them, it'll look like a more natural bloom. So take that skewer and go all around to each of those petals. And it doesn't have to look too delicate, but those are folded a little bit. So that when you're done curling, it's not too much, but I've just curled the edges down a little bit. I'm going to put that one aside, and I'm going to pick up another piece and keep going. So that each of those cones has that curled edge. While you're doing this and meditating a little bit, if you think of crafts you've seen using old books that you'd be interested in us taking on, please feel free to let us know. My email is eandrews@clamsnat.org, and I love recycling these old books that are not ready to be put in circulation or maybe have a little bit of damage, but there's still so much life to them. So if there's ever something that you're interested in, I'd love to take it on. Keep going until all of your pieces are curled. And in my case, this guy has to get glued again. With your 2 petal and your 1 petal, you don't have to curl the ends. It's a little more difficult. But that's up to you. If you curl them or don't, it still looks lovely at the end. In this case, I'm going to give it a try because we have a minute. For our friends who are on here, give me a thumbs up when you've done your curling and you're ready to move on. Okay. All right, this is where I don't want you to burn yourselves with any hot glue. And if you haven't plugged it in, it's okay. You can take a look. So we're going to take our large piece and we're going to put a little bit of hot glue on the inside, right around this ring. Not a ton, but just some. Excuse my mouth and the crafting. So I have that on that inner ring, and I'm going to grab the next biggest and I'm going to put it on here, but offset the petals. So I don't want them to match up completely. I want them to be offset just a little bit and line up that hole. So just a little bit off, just like it would be on a rose. And then add another ring in there. And stack our next biggest piece. Again, off center. So now we're kind of seeing it take shape. So we have our 7, our 6, our 5. Now I'm going to put the 3 in there. That ring of glue. Put it in here. So now our rose is getting a little bit tighter, and you could see inside that the hole is a little bit smaller too. And that's going to work to our advantage when we put the stem in there. So now we have our 2 and our 1 left over. And with our 2, you're going to roll it in on itself like an ice cream cone. You're going to roll it in so that it looks like this. And add a little bit of glue, just kind of like into the abyss of that hole. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you're going to put your rolled 2-piece in there, just as best as you can. In my case, it folded a little bit, so it's okay if it's tight. Now this rose is really coming alive. And with the last one, I like to use the skewer to kind of help me roll it a little bit. It's going to be a bit tighter. So I have this little tiny little roll, and I'm going to add some glue to the center of my rose and stick that in there too. Just like you would see in a normal rose. Just like in nature, all of these are going to be a little bit different, right? But the folds really help it look like it's opened. So this is where I warn you, do not burn yourself. If you do, cold water. I take my skewer right here, and with the pointy end, I'm going to stake it through the center until it weaves its way down. Sometimes I've had to dig a little bit and that's okay. Just means it's going to be tighter. I move this all the way to the edge until I can't really see my skewer anymore. You can still see that a little bit. I'm gonna squeeze in a bunch of hot glue into the center and pull it down a little bit more so that, again, I can't really see too much. And then at the base of the flower, I'm going to add a little bit more glue. I'm going to let that dry for a minute because that's going to like seal up that hole so that all the petals won't fall. And this should be somewhat similar to what you might put together. And if you have little leaves that came in your kit, you could give those a try to put on if you'd like. In this case, I cut some very old gardening books that didn't seem so relevant anymore. Who knew that gardening could change so much? If I wanted to, I could add onto the side so that maybe we wouldn't see that glue as much. Give that a try. I just creased it a little bit. That's like under petals. But that's up to you. I kind of like the way it looks just plain. At the library, we have a bouquet of about 8 of them in a tiny vase. And when they're all packed together like that, they look really lovely.